Yeah. Hey everybody, happy Torch Thursday tutorial stream. How are y'all doing this lovely Thursday? Of course, it's 3 guesses what the weather is in Dallas. Hot and sunny, you said? Exactly. 100%, because that's what happens when it's summer in Dallas. But we have a fun Torch Thursday tutorial for you. Yes, I'm a little late getting online. Yes, I completely did not write any tools down because I figured I should actually just, get online and talk to you about it rather than taking the time to write it down. So this is a fun one. This is it is a recycle from the early days of quarantine. I remember doing that's wrong. That's oops. Yeah. So what happened here was when I was getting all my photos together in my scenes, I put Saturday's project up as today's project. So there you go. All right, that is today's project. So hammered and soldered bangles, or soldered and hammered bangles. I'm pretty sure that I've said it both ways on various different social media platforms, but it's these right here. So these are so simple and easy to make. I loves them. This is actually my set of 3 that I usually wear. They've been serving as class samples, which is why I haven't had them on my wrist for the past couple days, but I'm totally snatching them back after this tutorial. So these are the ones that I wear. I made out of 3 different metals, and that is specifically because they were a commission. These bracelets, I had a gallery in town ask me if I could replicate something that another artist had been doing that wasn't doing anymore, which was a set of 3, a rose, a yellow, and a sterling silver with the wrapping. And I said, yes, of course I can do that. That's not that difficult. Unfortunately, my first sample set, I did not calculate appropriately for the enlarging that was going to happen with the hammering. I thought it was going to get bigger than it did. And so what I wound up with were 3 bangles that will pretty much fit nobody but me and a small child. So I made a second set for the gallery that were bigger. And what I learned from this experiment is your bangles, you would think when you take a 10 gauge round wire, which is this honkin' stuff, and you hammer it down to this level of flatness, you would think it would actually expand the circumference of your bracelet a fair amount, but it doesn't as much as I would have thought. So it's about 1/4 of an inch is what you're going to gain in the hammering of this. So you do need to account for that if you don't want your bracelets to be too big, but in most instances, too big is a better mistake to make than too small. And also, Lori, my commiserations for you and your stresses with your provincial government. We here in Texas commiserate with you on that, because our provincially minded, backwards ass government is equally frustrating. And at least we have other facets of our government who are trying their best to protect us, but it's really difficult when it's not a top-down situation. So I'm fully expecting this whole kind of political war in Texas to just become a complete and total tire fire, more so than it even has been over the next couple of weeks, because we've got county officials getting injunctions against the governor, and like school superintendents taking matters into their own hands in a good way, in my opinion. But yeah, it's gonna get crazier. That's not even a word. Crazier. Yeah, I'm sorry, Lori. I mean, I got nothing for you on that, except for commiseration and crafty time and torches. Definitely torches. So let's talk tools and supplies for this evening's tutorial. You are going to need 10 gauge wire. All right, this is a big ass coil of 10 gauge bronze. That's what I'm going to be using for all 3 of my bracelets this evening, but you can do this with sterling silver. You can do it with brass, bronze, copper. This is also a good project for gold filled because of the wrapping. Okay, so here's the thing about gold filled, which I haven't talked about in a while, is it's common wisdom. Like if you talk to any classically trained jeweler, they're going to say you cannot solder gold-filled. And that's not technically true. You can solder gold-filled. You absolutely can get gold-filled to solder. You can fabricate anything you want to from it, and it'll be secure. But here's the thing, is it'll be secure, but it won't be pretty necessarily. That's the thing about gold-filled. Sorry, I just realized that that's like right there in the valley, and maybe not the necklace I want to be wearing on stream. But anyway, so gold-filled, for anybody who's not familiar with what that material is it's essentially a double layer 14 karat gold on top of a jeweler's brass base. So what happens when you solder on it is you will actually oxidize or scorch off the top layer or layers of gold, leaving you with something that is structurally sound, but the pretty shiny finish on it has gone away. So, you know, even though you can get it to bond, you wind up with something that's not very pretty. So that's where this little wrapping detail comes into play, is when you're soldering gold filled, most of the time your scorching happens right at your joint. So all you need to do is wrap the silver wire over that scorched area, and you can have a very pretty, very wearable piece in gold filled. Like this is 14 karat gold filled, yellow gold filled. This one's actually rose gold filled. And I didn't wrap the joint on this one, and I will say it's held up surprisingly well. And then, of course, sterling silver is sterling silver. Oh, well, tell Heather to stop making jokes then. I didn't mean to be funny. I don't think that's true at all. No. You be nicer, I will turn on the Heather cam. That's all I have to say. See, now I have leverage. I have a leverage with the buttons and the pushing. But anyway, okay. So that was a whole rant. But 10 gauge bronze is what I'm going to use this evening for my bracelets. You also are going to need some 24 gauge wire in some contrasting metal or not. It's up to you. But I like to contrast. I'm doing sterling silver. Oh, last I saw one, it was on the table by where I was sitting, but I might have put it somewhere down. In which case, I'll find it.
Go.
Yay! I did put it somewhere down.
No, you
That's
did
a
not.
thing. Carol May found the phone. I touched it. Like anytime I touch something, it's like it's even odds that it might fall into a pocket dimension. Seriously. But so 24 gauge wire, I'm using sterling silver. So how much wire are you going to need? So your bangles are going to expand about 1/4 of an inch when you hammer them. Most bangles, for people who are not me, are going to be 8 inches of wire, which gives you about a 2 3/8 to 2.5 inch diameter. So I'm going to do 7 3/4 inches of wire times 3. That's how much of the 10 gauge you need. And of the 24 gauge, you're going to need about 18 inches to 2 feet per wrap. The ring chart does not have sizing for bracelets. That's an interesting question. As far as like sizing bracelets for yourself, of course, you can always like make a duck with your hand and just measure around the widest part of it. There are also bangle sizers out there, but your average for a commercial bangle is 8 inches of wire, 2.5 inches in diameter. So again, 7 3/4 times 3, that's what I'm going to use for the 10 gauge, and then 18 to 24 inches per wrapping bit. I'm just going to do 2 of those, so that means I need 3 or 4 feet of my 24 gauge wire. I'm also going to need easy solder, assuming that I have some in here, otherwise I'm going to be using a different density of solder. Hey look, there's easy. I need to refill my little solder. Well, I need to refill my little solder box. Okay, so easy solder. There's a sneeze in there, so it's going to come out at some point. All right, let's talk tools. Okay, so yeah, torch stuff. Seriously, you need all your soldering stuff. So you need your torch, you need your soldering surface, you're going to need your flux, pickle pot. Sorry, y'all, I'm leaving town tomorrow, so my brain is not necessarily...
It's already gone?
...as focused. Well, no, it's multitasking. Because right now, it's also working on, like, thinking about what I need to pack and thinking about what I need to do before I leave tonight and how to accomplish all of that in order to get to the pharmacy on time. And of course, that means that I really should focus on this tutorial so I can end it on time. And yeah, so welcome to the, cascading shit show that is my brain. I couldn't think of any other word. Apparently, all of my subtle wit has also left at this point. All of those processors are doing other things. So, all right. So what did I get through so far? Torch, soldering surface, flux, pickle pot, pliers, round nose, chain nose, wire cutters, and brain overload scramble. Seriously. All right. File. Definitely need a file. Tools that are particular to this tutorial, you are going to need a round steel bracelet mandrel. Okay, you can do this with an oval one, but it really works better with a round one. You're going to need a chasing hammer, and we are going to be using both sides of our chasing hammer, so both the flat side and the round side. And then your usual steel wool, possibly some sandpaper, also super pickle. So when you're soldering with brass or bronze specifically, which are natively yellow colored metals, okay, bronze is a little bit more reddish than brass, but they're both yellow toned metals. Okay, so when we solder with these, after we pickle them, they are going to be copper. The reason for that is because the soldering oxidizes all of the non-copper portions of the alloy, and then when we put it in the pickle, those are the portions of the alloy that are removed by the pickle, which leaves us with essentially a depletion gilding of copper on our bracelets. In order to remove that, we need super pickle. Yay. Super pickle is, for me, and there are lots of different recipes for super pickle out there. A lot of them involve Sparax, which is no bueno when you mix it with some other things, but my preferred super pickle is 1-to-1 white vinegar hydrogen peroxide. Works great to chemically strip that depletion gilding off of your metal and is not likely to explode. Don't drink it though, but once again, don't drink the crafting, don't eat the crafting, not ever a good idea.
Keep your mouth off the crafting.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Which once again takes me back to that meme of should you lick the science or can you lick the science?
Yes.
Which is so funny.
It is.
So I'm going to start with my 10 gauge wire now. If 10 gauge is a little, again, 7 3/4 is my length. I'm going to cut while I'm talking. So if 10 gauge is a little hefty for you, if you're like, wow, this is just a little bit much, you absolutely could use 12 gauge. And looking at the bangles that are in front of me, it's entirely possible that I used 12 gauge when I made them. So 10 gauge, 12 gauge, wow, that's a bear to cut. 10 gauge bronze, not for the faint of hands.
No.
But yeah, so 10 gauge, 12 gauge, even 14 gauge would work. Yeah, that's I'm really trying to cut this and it's not working face. This is where, holy mackerel, a good heavy duty pair of wire cutters will not do you wrong. So again, 7 3/4 inches is what I'm cutting because I'm going to gain 1/4 of an inch from my hammering. Now I'm going to take my wire. I'm going to show you all an extreme close-up of my sweater. And I'm going to grab myself a file. I'm going to take my wire. Take my wire and I'm just going to flip it around so that the ends are coming in towards each other, like so. Hey everyone, bear with me for uno momento.
Uh-oh, she's talking in tongues.
Nah, hang out with Ziggy for a sec, I'll be right back. Oh, but I'm gonna sneeze. Oh, sorry everybody, I just got some sad news from a friend of mine, and all I have to say about it on stream is get your vaccination, wear your mask. People, this thing is not over, says the person who's getting on a plane tomorrow with many masks on. Many masks. So, take your ends, separate them a bit, and grab yourself a file. Now, we just need to flatten the ends of our wires so that they will meet flush. And the cool thing about this is they don't have to, your bracelet doesn't have to be round at this point. Like you will notice mine is this really weird ovoid shape. This makes it a lot easier to do this because these ends can come straight in towards each other, and you don't have to worry about filing weird angles. So once I've flattened this to the point where the burr from my wire cutter is gone, I can tension fit it. You can give it the stink eye for a minute, and there we go. So that's what you want. You want a joint that fits flush with no space. So now we're going to do this with my other two. So again, that process was, and I'm sorry I've taken a break in the middle of it. So I'm going to flip back around like so that my two ends are coming in straight towards each other. I'm going to separate them out. I'm going to take my file and I'm going to file. And then I'm going to tension fit. So by tension fit, I mean I'm going to take my wire and I'm just going to move the ends past each other until I can get them to snap back and hold tension. Without me having to hold it. So there's joint number 2 and joint number 3 coming at ya. We go. Alright, so now it's time to solder, but before we solder, of course, we have to have Allison's super quick 5-point soldering safety lecture. So before I start this, of course, I do need to point out that I am not a credentialed anything as far as safety goes. I am just some rando on the internet. There's absolutely no reason you should listen to me about anything soldering or otherwise, frankly, but I have been teaching soldering for 10 plus years, and there are a number of things that consistently come up as far as having a safe soldering workspace in your home and being safe in a community soldering workspace. So, number 1, make sure that you have 6 to 8 inches of clear space around your torch area. That means nothing within 6 to 8 inches of your torch area that is meltable or flammable. You know what's meltable and flammable? Webcams, lights, tissues. So do as I say, not as I do. As long as you keep that 6 to 8 inches, your chances of accidentally starting a fire are significantly reduced. Number 2, once you've had a flame going in your work area from that point forward, always assume that everything in your work area is hot enough to burn you, because it probably is. Number 3, ventilation is important. If you find yourself coughing, hacking, wheezing, or feeling otherwise uncomfortable in the lung area after a soldering session, you probably need to re-examine your ventilation situation. And 4, if you're not actively soldering with your torch, turn it off. It's very easy to light it. It's very easy to extinguish it. There's no reason to leave it going when you're not there to babysit it. And number 5, make sure you always know where your fire extinguisher is. So now that we have that out of the way, I've got my bracelet that I'm going to solder. I have my joint tension fit right there. I'm going to take a small piece of easy solder and just set it on my board where it'll be easy for me to get to it. It's right there. And I'm going to take my flux. Flux is a chemical that protects my metal from oxidation, which allows my soldering process to happen. So I'm going to take my flux and I'm going to paint flux onto my joint. I use Handy Flux, which is a borax-based paste flux. It's not edible. It's in fact poisonous. Don't eat the flux, boys and girls. But I like it because it's inexpensive and easy to use. Now, I'm going to light my torch, grab my tweezers. Not those tweezers. I need a nasty pair of tweezers. Don't use your good tweezers to solder with. They will very, very quickly cease to be your good tweezers, for sure. Aha, I have found crappy tweezers. Alright, and before I light my torch, I'm going to take my piece of solder and I'm just going to gently place it on top of my joint. Yes, this is sterling silver easy solder, even though I'm soldering with bronze. Typically when I'm using bronze, I'll use 14 karat gold solder. There's not actually a good bronze solder out there. So, you know, sometimes one, sometimes the other. Oh, yay! Sharon says the airport and flying didn't seem any more scary than the grocery store. Fair point. The grocery stores here in Texas are a little bit scary right now, along with everything else. Alright, I lit my torch. Got my tweezers in my right hand just in case, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat this whole bracelet. So you can't see because of the camera zoom, but I'm basically taking my flame and I'm going, you can see it right there, I'm going around my whole bracelet. Why am I heating my whole bracelet? Because metal conducts heat. So any part of my metal that's not being actively heated is acting as what's called a heat sink, meaning that it is pulling heat away from my joint. And if I let my metal get too cold, it's going to be too much of a heat sink. It's going to counteract the heat of my torch. My solder is never going to flow. Now, this is why I love the Handy Flux, is because the Handy Flux is going to help you here. The Handy Flux reacts to the heat, and once it turns clear, that's the flux telling you that the metal's reached the temperature where solder can flow. So now that my flux is clear, I'm going to concentrate on that joint, and I'm going to see if I can get my solder to flow. So solder flows towards heat. Okay, so what it just did was it flowed towards the heat, which is great, except for the fact that I had my heat in the wrong spot. Alright, I had my heat there, and that's where my solder flowed. So now what I have to do is I have to try and pull it with the heat where I want it, which is across the joint. So I gotta heat everything up, I gotta heat this joint, and then I gotta make this side of the joint hotter. I've gotta make this side of the joint more attractive to the solder. There we go, to get it to flow across. I cannot see because I have my glasses off, but I hope everyone saw that. It's really pretty freaking cool when you see solder actually like jump based on the heat like that. So you can do crazy things with solder, like you can even cause it to flow counter to gravity just by moving the heat. So heat really is the main attractant for your solder. So it's important to remember that when you're soldering. If your solder's not flowing where you want it to flow, it's probably because you don't have the heat in the right place. Much as it sucks to have to assume that level of responsibility for your solder's behavior, it is sad but true. Alright, so this is bracelet number 2. And if you can't get your solder to sit on top, just put a little bit more flux on there and that little bit of kind of goopy squish, and yes, goopy squish is totally a technical term, will help it sit. Of course, you also have to have some goopy squish. Also, what I just did right then, touched my bracelet after it had been sitting on my soldering surface. Not a good idea. You know why? Because these soldering surfaces are designed to absorb heat and reflect it back on your item, which means that my bracelet has been sitting here absorbing all of the heat from my previous bracelet that I soldered. So all of that heat that I put into the solder board for my previous bracelet, this piece of metal has just been soaking it all up. So I didn't burn myself, but I very easily could have. So once again, don't touch metal with your bare hands. Tweezers are your friend. All right, we're going to see if I can do this right the first time now. So I'm going to heat that joint. And there we go, much better. And then once I've soldered, it goes into the pickle. We're going to talk real quick about what the pickle is and what it does in a minute. But for now, I'm going to solder this third one. Where did I put it? That moment when you realize you put your solder down and you don't, and you realize that you put your torch on top of it. Shockingly, that makes it hard to find. Alright, so this is my third bracelet. Alright, I got my solder on top of the joint. I'm heating everything. Once again, so what I'm doing in an attempt to mitigate or not do what I did before is I'm moving my heat across my joint rather than parking it in one place. There we go. Bingo. Okay, so into the pickle. This one goes. So pickle, what is pickle? Pickle is a weak acid solution, and what it does is it removes all of the crud. Yes, I said crud. It removes all of the flux residue, the oxide, all the stuff on your bracelet that's not very pretty so that you can polish it and make it pretty to wear. Now, how long does your piece have to stay in the pickle? It depends on a couple of things. It depends on how hot your pickle is, it depends on how fresh your pickle is, and it depends on how hot your piece was when it went into the pickle. Since my pieces were pretty warm when they went in, they didn't take a whole lot of time to pickle. Now, this is my first bracelet, possibly my second bracelet, but what we have here is we've got the bronze color, but you can see that copper, well, you may or may not, since my camera's decided to be real excited about like everything light. There we go. So you can kind of see that copper depletion gilding right around the joint. See where it goes from yellow to being really, really pink? So I'm going to take my super pickle, which again, 1:1, vinegar and peroxide. And just your straight up peroxide, you know, from the drugstore. It's not anything, not any special, you don't have to get special, you know, hydrogen peroxide. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to drop it in there. And what that vinegar peroxide mix is going to do is it's going to chemically strip that copper from the surface. Got it. Alright, and then we're going to take a gander at my other two bracelets. Yep, alright, everything's done. So, it can be kind of scary to put your bracelets into the pickle when they're hot. You get that, you know, kind of sizzling sound that's a little frightening at first, but it really does increase the efficacy, not the efficacy for the pickle, but the speed of the pickling process if the pieces that you put in there are actually hot. Now, that being said, your pickle also works better when it's hot, so I do have mine in a crock pot. It's just a regular old crock pot from Target, but I do mean to say, once you've used your crock pot for pickle, you cannot use your crock pot for chili, okay? Once you put pickle in it, it's a pickle pot, not a crock pot. I've got mine on high, and then since I'm done with my work session, I just unplugged it, and I can just put the lid on. I can store it with the lid on, with the pickle mix, since the ceramic crock in the crock pot is non-reactive, and then when it's time for me to work again, I just plug it back in. So my pieces are in the super pickle now, and what I want is I want to see bubbling. I'm not really seeing bubbling. So this is where the fact that I tend not to measure things is not helpful, because if you get your super pickle mix right, so 1:1, you'll pretty quickly start seeing Bubbles, there we go. Yes. Bubbles from your peroxide eating away at that copper layer. So you probably can't see. There are tiny little bubbles now happening in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until the Super Pickle has returned the metal to its native yellow color. Yeah, so you probably can't see, but like, because my ring light is in the way. Yeah, there are little strings of bubbles that are coming off of that now. You can barely see them. That's what you want to see. So as you do this, your Super Pickle is going to start to turn blue. That's actually it stripping all of those free copper ions off of, or atoms off of your piece. So I've got one piece that's pretty clean, so we're going to start with that. Alright, so this one has been in the Super Pickle for a minute, and holy crap. Yeah, so it's mostly back to being yellow. If you're not on, a time schedule for your tutorial, you can of course leave them in the Super Pickle for as long as you need to get that copper to go away off your metal, but make sure that you don't leave them in the Super Pickle for too long, because bronze and brass are copper alloys. So, if you leave them in the copper stripping chemical for a reasonable amount of time, it will strip the copper off the surface. But if you leave it in for too long, it's going to start eating into the alloy, and you don't want that. So you do need to babysit these a little bit and remove them from the Super Pickle fairly promptly after the metal's changed back to its native color. Now, you don't have to do anything else with them after that. Like, if you don't have time to shape them or whatever, that's fine. Just take them, rinse them off. If you want to neutralize them in baking soda water, fine. Dry them off, and then they can just sit pretty much for an indefinite period of time. Do make sure you dry them off, though. If you leave the pickle sitting on them, it's going to make a really weird finish on your metal. So I'm going to take my bracelet now, which, remember, was not round, it's this kind of weird shape, and I'm just going to press it down on my tapered mandrel. So again, this is a tapered round mandrel. Now I'm going to take my hammer, my chasing hammer, and I'm going to start with the flat side of my chasing hammer. I'm going to hammer all the way around. So you notice this still isn't round, this bracelet, but it will be once I'm done hammering it. So I'm going to go with the flat side all the way around. By the way, it's going to get loud. So could I hit this with a mallet to round it out and then hammer? Of course I could, but I'm lazy. I like to do 2 steps at once. Don't hit your fingers. I realize it probably should go without saying, but I'm saying it anyway. Okay, so this is my flat hammered, which is a fun texture. But now I'm going to go back around with the round side of my chasing hammer to do my hammered texture. And that just takes a little bit more aiming because you don't have as big a surface to hit with as you do when you're using the flat side. So, just try and hit the round surface on your wire. Also, that mandrel is not light. If you can rest it on something, do it. And then last but not least, you can either tumble this or grab yourself a piece of fine steel wool and just give it a buff. Cool, thank you. So I'm just going to buff that with steel wool. And I usually just buff the outside. I don't really bother with the inside because my wrist is going to do that. And there we go. That is one completed, hammered, soldered bangle bracelet. So now I'm going to grab my other two out of the pickle and I'm going to go ahead and hammer those as well. And then we're going to do the wire wrapping bit. So take them out of the super pickle, dry them off. And you just don't want to put water or moisture on your stainless steel mandrel. It's not good for the mandrel. Alright, and then we're going to do the same thing. So, push it down on your mandrel. Grab your tasting hammer, once around with the flat side, once around with the round side. We didn't send out the Zoom email, did we?
Do it right now.
So, tomorrow night is our Zoom Crafty Cocktail Hour. For anybody who hasn't Zoomed with us, it's usually a really good time. So, if you have Zoomed with us, the same meeting info you've been using. I'm not going to post the wrong meeting info to Discord this time. And you can join us at 6 p.m. Central for crafts, cocktails. I'm not going to be teaching a project, but I will be on. Heather will be on. We will be there to help you with anything that you need. Our projects, other people's projects. It's a great time to get help. Great time to get opinions. And it's usually a really fun time. So that kicks off tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Central Time. And we usually go till around 8. If you need that meeting information, feel free to email us, beatingdreamsdallas@gmail.com. And yes, I am using my boobs to hold the mandrel. Don't judge.
Use the tools you have.
Exactly. Alright, one more. Now, of course, do you have to make these bracelets in sets of 3? Of course you don't. That's ridiculous. I just decided to. Hey, Amy Anna B, how are you? How's everything? We're pounding on stuff. Alright, that was the flat side, now the round side. Okay, that's all the pounding for tonight, folks. I'm going to shine that up. Alright, now we're going to do the wire wrapping. And so the wire wrapping really is the easiest part of this whole process. I am just literally going to coil my 24 gauge wire around my bangles, and I can do it in 2 places on each bangle, 3, 4. I have some clients who have done some crazy things where they just wire wrap the whole thing. So really, you know, feel like you can do whatever you want at this point. But I'm going to start with 2 feet of wire. I mean, I guess do whatever you want is a little bit, you know, too liberal, but I mean, at this point, it's, you know, anybody's game. Okay, we have, so what I will say though is if you are going to wrap wire around, Using it to cover your joints is a good thing to do. So I'm going to just start a little off my joint. I'm going to take my wire, I'm going to hold a little bit over my bracelet, and I'm just going to start literally coiling it around my bracelet. And you can slide this, so your starting point, if it was too close or too far, you can move it. The other cool thing about this is you can add a piece of wire. So if 2 feet's not long enough, hey, add 2 more feet. I don't know. If it does, then go for it. But one of the cool things about this that I like is when I kind of build it up and it looks a little bit more organic. I will have to say huge kudos to my staff, because they know that I'm going out of town and that I need to get out of here by 7:30 tonight, and so they did a really spectacular job of making sure that everything is done so that I can pretty much get off stream and boogie. Okay, so I've gone all the way this way, I've covered over my joint, now I'm going to go back the other way. And this is where you get that kind of layered up, sort of organic look. Oh my god, I'm so looking forward to leaving town. Like, it's stressful. Like, the pre-leaving town is very stressful, especially because I haven't left town in, 18 months. So I've kind of forgotten how to do it a little bit. But I am so looking forward to just being somewhere else. So now I'm just going to keep going back and forth until I've used up all my wire. And once again, if this 24-inch piece of wire is not long enough, add more. Ooh, Amy Annaby is in Normandy. Normandy? How does one say that? I actually don't know. Not being a native Texan or Oklahoman. I do like to do a little bit more wrapping. Normandy. Got it. I like to do a little bit more wrapping kind of in the center of my piece to give it a little bit more, kind of a shape to it. And you can just wrap all the way to the ends of your wire if you want. And then the very last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my chain nose pliers to tuck them in. So, chain nose pliers, and there's my pokey stabby end. We don't want that, so I'm just going to take that and I'm just going to push it down so that it's laying nice and flat against my bracelet. And I'm going to do the same with this one. Now, this one being more kind of in the bulk of my wraps is, I can actually sort of take it and shove it down inside there. Oof. Apparently I'm going to hiccup. So that's how you wrap wire around it. So you can see that what I did with the one I just made is shorter and fatter than this one. This black in here, you can do this with liver of sulfur, but what this really is, in my case, is just natural patina that's developed over wearing them. But that, peoples, of the Beating Dreams stream is the conclusion of Hammered Soldered Bangles. So really, super simple concept. And once again, you can use this concept to create any closed soldered shape you want. So circles, squares, triangles, take your pick. Now these, since I just buffed them with steel wool, they're kind of satiny colored. I am going to go ahead and put them in the tumbler when I get back, make them shiny, shiny like these, but you don't have to. If you like the satin finish, more power to you. So that's it for our Torch Thursday stream. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. Yay! Thanks, Lori. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on the Torch Thursday. Okay, my hand is... These are bracelets I have to put on in the morning, not at night, because in the evening my hand is so swollen that I can't do it. So, thank you so much for hanging out with us on the Beating Dreams stream. I'm Allison from Beating Dreams in Dallas, Texas. We are an actual brick and mortar retail bead store, and we are here on Lover's Lane in Dallas to feed your need to bead 6 days a week. We're here Monday through Saturday from 1 p.m. until 6 p.m. If you're not local in Dallas, you can find us on this channel, twitch.tv/Beating Dream. Thanks, Lori. 5 times a week with complimentary tutorials. We stream a Wednesday through Saturday at 6 p.m. Central Time, because we are here in Dallas, Texas. Plus live merchandise sales every Wednesday and Saturday at 7:30 and bonus stream Thursdays at noon. But tomorrow evening, you will not find us on Facebook. You will not find us on Twitch. You will find us on Zoom. If you need that Zoom information, email us beatingdreamsdallas@gmail.com. I will look forward to seeing all of your beautiful faces on Zoom tomorrow night. And if you're not going to make it to the Zoom, don't forget we'll also be back on this channel, twitch.tv/Beating Dreams, Saturday night at 6 p.m. with this project. This is that earring project that popped up earlier. This is our double triangle earrings. That's going to be followed by a live merchandise sale. So everyone have a great night. I promise I will have a fantastic and safe trip, and I will see you all tomorrow on Zoom from Chicago. Very excited by that. So everyone have a great night. Have a fabulous Friday the 13th, and I will see you all on Zoom tomorrow.